Hey there, and welcome to DIY Projects with Pete. This is another episode of the renovation series, and in today's video we'll be working on the laundry room. So we'll be taking an unfinished laundry room and making it look a little bit more polished. Now if you enjoy the renovation series, check out the playlist on my channel, and if you find this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I want to give a special thanks to Maytag for sponsoring today's video. Let's go ahead and get started. Here's a look at what we started out with, and you can see there's quite a bit of potential to give it a more finished look. Now in this video, we'll do some drywall, texture, paint, trim, doors, and then hook up the washer and dryer. I started by cleaning out the room and then removing all the stuff from the shelves. The shelves came down after backing out a few screws from the brackets. Then I removed the door frame from the north side of the room to prepare to fill it in. A large pry bar works great for demo and for removing old door jambs. Next, I removed an old piece of drywall so I could get a good look at what was behind it. I also discovered quite a bit of a mess behind it, and so I swept and cleaned things out. Then I measured the width of the door opening and started framing it out by attaching a pressure-treated 2x4 to the concrete. I pre-drilled with a hammer drill and a mason bit, then used concrete screws. Once this was in place, I continued framing out where the old door used to be. Then it was time to reinstall the drywall. Now I had a section that still needed some insulation on one side of the room, so I cut a piece to size and then screwed the drywall in place. Once this was done, I cut pieces of drywall to size to cover up where the door used to be. Now I didn't have a full sheet and I really didn't want to run all the way to the hardware store for a second time that day, so I used some smaller scraps that were laying around. I covered the floor by rolling out construction paper and overlapping it a bit at the seams. This way, the floor will stay nice and clean. The next step was to mud and tape the seams of each drywall board. I put some mud on the hawk and then began applying mud to each joint and over the screw holes. You'll want to get a nice tight pull across everything, and then I'm going to do a trowel finish after the taping process. Now, I always use the paper tape at the seams, and then I use the paper tape with the crease in the center and a drywall cornering tool for the corners. You'll want to feather it out around each seam, and I'm not a drywall expert by any means, but I've done a lot of troweling, and so I can make a skip trowel or a pool trowel texture finish look pretty decent. Next, I textured the walls and the ceiling. I like to water down the mud a bit for the texturing process to make it a bit easier to work with, and I move the trowel in swirl patterns until I get the variation I'm going for. The interior doors for the home all arrived, so I decided to get the last old door jamb out. After the mud dried, I came back and sanded the high spots and smoothed things out a bit. You'll create a lot of dust during this process, so make sure to wear a mask, and after sanding, I dust off the walls and then do a quick wipe down prior to painting. I want the room to feel as bright as possible since it doesn't have any windows, so I decided to use a white paint named Alabaster in an eggshell finish. I then primed and rolled on 2 coats of paint. You can see that second coat of paint really evens things out and gives the walls a finished look. After painting, I was able to roll up the construction paper and move on to the next step. And while I was out in the garage, I heard a knock at the door, and the appliance delivery guys were here with all the new appliances for the home. So I had them put the washer and dryer in the garage where I could unbox them and then move them into the laundry room when I was ready. I rolled the washer and dryer into the room to look at the layout and then started installing the door. I got all solid fir 5-panel shaker style interior doors for the home. I'll eventually stain and clear coat all of them once I determine what stain color to use. Now, when installing doors, I like to use quick door hangers because it makes the process super fast and easy. And then after hanging the door and making adjustments, I added the door handle lever and then began adding trim around the door frame. I used 1x3 painted pine trim around the door. You'll want to make sure the gap between the door and the trim is even on all sides. Then I cut 1x4 boards down to size on a miter saw to use as the baseboard trim in the laundry room. I attached it around the perimeter of the room using a nail gun and 2-inch long nails. Before installing the appliances, I mopped the area to get it nice and clean. I installed the dryer first. I simply clamped the vent hose on the back, added a power cord, and then plugged it in. Then I moved it in place and leveled the legs. For the washer, I hooked up the hot and cold water supply hoses, first by hand and then using a wrench to make sure they were nice and tight. I then clamped the drain hose to the back of the washer, and the other side went to the drain pipe, which is behind the wall. Then all that had to be done was to plug it in. The hole in the wall where the spigots are looked a bit ugly to me, so I built a little cover that is held up with a French cleat. Then it was time to play around with these new machines to see how they work. Now, I've never had a newer washer and dryer, so this was definitely night and day different from my old school 1990s washer and dryer in both looks and performance. Now, I really do like these, and they're super easy to use, and they have tons of cool features. So you're probably wondering what I've done so far with the other side of the room, and that's something I'll be covering in a future video. I have a lot of improvements going on in the house, and so I need to keep access to this area for changes that we made with wiring and piping. But my thoughts are to section off the water heater, cover the ceiling, add some more shelving, and then to either acid stain or paint the floor. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas, so please comment below. Thanks so much for tuning in to another renovation series episode on DIY Projects with Pete. If you enjoyed it, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Now, I hope this video inspires you to get started on a renovation project or a DIY project at your home. And if so, let me know what you're working on. Comment below. Have a great day, guys, and cheers from Montana.